Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We are coming to you live from NEDAS in New York City at a fantastic summit. We're so glad to have you with us here at Convene, and I'm hanging out with Phil Shih from Structure Research, leader at Structure Research. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so as we were saying a moment ago, I'm not going to ask you what is structure research, what do you do? I want to get more kind of your vision on the industry and what you're trying to accomplish with structure research, and let that take us into the conversation.
Yeah, so I think what might be different about myself and some of the other people that are at this event and the other people you interview is that I'm pretty new to this industry, to this conversation, and to the topics that are being discussed here. New in the sense that us as a research firm, we've spent most of our time, we're a very focused shop. We spend most of our time with MSPs, data center operators, and hyperscale clouds. So kind of the larger internet infrastructure services ecosystem. Now, why does a guy like me that hangs out in that crowd, gravitate to this event, the NEDAS event here in New York? And it's, what we feel is going to be, it's that what's going on here is eventually going to converge with what's going on in our world. So these worlds are going to come together. There's going to be a lot of convergence. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but it's definitely something that's coming. And so I'm very keen, as an analyst, in understanding what the future is going to look like. And I find that a lot of the answers to that question are here. What's happening, with the wireless space and how that's going to be a big part of connecting hyperscale infrastructure with what's happening at the edge. And that's literally, a couple of years back, this kind of edge buzzword came out, and I've been chasing the buzzword almost, but trying to figure out, hey, how does that fit in our world? And that's why I'm here.
This is pretty prescient of you. A lot of people wait until they're at that clash, at that moment where they have to incorporate a technology that's happening in parallel to what it is that they're doing. You have seen this out in advance and said, well, eventually I see where the connection point is further down the road, and I want to get out ahead of that. How many people are on your team?
It's a small team. Our analyst team is 5 people.
And so were all 5 of you on the same page as you set out and said, yeah, I mean, you have telecom, you have network, you have data center background going on. But in terms of what's happening here within the NEDAS group that's in the room, were all 5 of you on the same page?
Yeah, I think with any kind of dynamic research group, we get to the same page in a different way. I think it's that we see different things happening in kind of the sub-segments that we spend more of our time in. So one person may spend a little more time with the MSP, like myself. Some of the guys spend more time with the real estate guys and the data center operators. Parts of our team are based in London. We spend a lot of time in Asia, and so there are different conversations with different people, with different parts of the ecosystem. Kind of the ideas pop up, and then we say, hey, we're starting to see some patterns, right? We're starting to see some of the same feedback, or some of the same comments, or some of the same problems that are being discussed. And then we say, hey, I think this is where it's going. And then we're like, okay. Then, one day we kind of just, the light bulb goes off and you're like, hey, we got to go after this. We got to find out what's going on. So,
and is that what you actually do? Do you look for those correlation points? Do you look for those opportunities where you hear 4 or 5, 6 stories and you start to see overlaps again and again and again, and you say, that's what we want to focus on at Structure Research?
I think that's part of it, but it's also, we serve a client base, and they often, parts of the ecosystem, whether they be on the investment side, on the operating side, on the vendor side, a lot of the kind of directional feedback we get is based on the questions they ask us, right? So they start to ask questions, and we have to answer them for them. And if we don't have a good answer, then maybe we're missing something, or maybe we're not looking into the future in the right direction. And so they guide us as much as we guide them. And that's why I felt that it was really important and really valuable to be a part of a different community that eventually is going to be a part of kind of a much wider, more converged community.
I love that thinking, because I think that's a lot of what NEDAS is all about as well, is trying to take that bigger picture approach to what do people want to see happen, and what can we really collaborate on together to drive the industry forward. I want to ask you basically how you got to this point. So you're an analyst coming out of school. Is this what you were doing originally? And then what were you doing that guided you along the way before you started structure research? And then as you made your way closer and closer into the telecom sphere?
No, I love that question, because I like to joke, have you did you, come out of school and think this was going to be your career? How did you back into this?
What do they say? It's 78% or something
Yeah.
of us end up not doing the thing that we went to school for, or at least doing something completely divergent than what we went to school
So
for.
yes and yes to those two.
Okay,
but
perfect.
also, what I like to tell people is like, yeah, I mean, I graduated and I worked in the grocery industry. That was my first job.
Okay, all right.
I worked in grocery, which is a million miles away from where we are today. But I backed into this, almost 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I went from grocery to something a little more closer, which was tech journalism. And then from tech journalism in not the first dot-com bubble back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Kind of the big story then, one of the big stories were, empty data centers when the bubble burst. There was all this real estate and infrastructure built out, but everything just stopped. And so I picked up on that story, started writing a few articles about it, and then that's kind of just led me, not too long after that, into research. Worked for a bigger firm for a while, and then, decided to venture out on my own and start something.
That's really the curiosity. So as you decided to hang out your own shingle, did you have a specialty in mind, and was it at all connected to what we're doing, sitting here talking about with each other today, by the time you started Structure Research?
I started it about 8 years ago. And so, no, I could not have imagined even, like, hyperscale is just a part of the conversation, but could not even have really imagined it back then, what it would become. The vision then was just to spend time in an area that there's not a lot of coverage in, that's difficult for a lot of people that are new to the space to understand, where a lot of the investment capital was starting to move. And I thought, hey, there's going to be an opportunity. Also, the market was just becoming global at the time, and myself, just my personal background and just kind of the experiences I've had in this space gave me a pretty global perspective, and I felt that was a unique value proposition for people to say, hey, listen, I understand this space. You may not understand it. If you're new to it, I can tell you what I think about the space, where I think it's going, and I can give you a global perspective, because I also think that's where it's going to end up. And so here we are.
All right, so let's go the other direction. So I asked you to look back. Let's look forward. Let's gaze into the crystal ball together. What really excites you about maybe what you're hearing today at this particular meeting, what you're hearing throughout the industry in general, whether it's on the analyst side or what you're hearing out of the press, or what you're seeing in your own data research that's really getting you excited, and things that you would really love to see happen moving forward over the next, say, 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple. The one thing that struck me today in a couple of the sessions is, a few of the people talking about how difficult this all is, but importantly, how different communities of interest or different kind of pieces of the puzzle, parts of the ecosystem, have to work together, or they have to at least talk together, talk to each other, communicate before this can happen, before all these pieces that have been built out can actually be put together in a cohesive and efficient way. So that's what I like to see. I would like to see all the different pieces: data center, managed services, fiber, telco, wireless, all become part of kind of just one big infrastructure services world that isn't as kind of siloed and separated as it is today. And I've heard a lot of kind of, I think, agreement that that's the direction things need to go in before all these challenges can be met.
I actually really love that vision, because I think we try to talk about this a lot with NEDAS. A lot of people are on board with it. A lot of people still live in their own camps. And the more that we can start to cooperate to move things forward, I think the better off we all are. I think it becomes a raise all boats scenario, and everybody wins. So what we're going to have to do is figure out a way to get you up onto the stage at next year's meeting and have you say that in no uncertain terms directly to people, that the more we work together, the more we succeed. Last thing I want to ask you before we wrap it up is, do you feel like you've made any valuable connections while you've been here today with some of the people that you've met? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think I think I've met a few people that just give me a different perspective, just a window into, different challenges, different pieces of the puzzle that they're working with, all kind of, similar, outcome in mind, but just a different, just a different side of the table. I feel is really valuable, because like you said, it's you can kind of get stuck in your own little world, and you kind of get into that rhythm. You don't want to challenge yourself. You don't want to get uncomfortable. And that's what I'm trying to do here is get a little uncomfortable. I think it's good advice, whoever gave that advice, which is to get out of your comfort zone a little bit and see what's out there, what else is out there, because it is going to be a part of your world, whether you like it or not. And that's what I think is happening with internet infrastructure.
It's the pressure cooker. Well, hopefully we've made you a little bit uncomfortable by pointing some cameras at you and asking you to talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Phil, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here and for committing to the event and for, again, extending that hand and reaching out and trying to meet new people and make new connections. We think that's what the meeting is all about.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for watching.